The median retirement savings for Americans aged 55 to 64 is $185,000. The number those same Americans believe they need to retire comfortably in 2026 is 1.46 million. That gap is not a rounding error. That is a different life. 58% of workers retire earlier than planned, not by choice, but because their health broke, their employer restructured, or both happened on the same Tuesday. The median age they actually stop working is 61. The median age they planned to stop working was 66. 5 years of contributions, 5 years of compounding, 5 years of runway gone, not deducted from their vacation time, but deducted from their portfolio at the exact moment they start pulling from it. And here's the part that changes everything. By the time most people hear those statistics and feel vaguely concerned, 3 of the most powerful financial levers in the entire tax code have already started their countdown. One of them expires the year you turn 64. One becomes exponentially more expensive the longer you wait. And one just quietly started existing in January 2025. And the overwhelming majority of people who could use it have no idea it's there. This video is about those 3 mechanisms, why they converge at age 58, and why the same actions taken in the next 12 to 18 months produce a materially different retirement than those exact same actions taken 4 years from now. Not slightly different, materially different. I am going to show you the math. Not the vibes, the math. Age 58 is not the beginning of retirement planning. I want to be precise about that because the framing matters. It's the last functional window where enough levers are still simultaneously open that you can meaningfully alter the outcome of a retirement that is already in motion. After 65, 3 of these windows close permanently, not partially permanently. After 64, one specific mechanism expires and reverts to a smaller version of itself. And the healthcare cost exposure, the Social Security timing decision, and the sequence of returns vulnerability all collide in a narrow band of time that nobody seems to be talking about as one unified problem. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk you through 4 overlapping mechanisms and explain exactly why each one has a hard deadline, what missing that deadline costs in actual dollars, and what the math looks like when you get it right versus when you don't. I'm also going to follow a guy I'll call Marcus. He's 57. He thinks he has until 65. I think you'll recognize him. Here's how I want you to think about this. Think about runway. A plane doesn't need infinite runway, but it needs enough. And the critical variable isn't how fast you plan to go. It's how fast you're actually going when the runway runs out, because the runway runs out whether you're ready or not. You don't vote on that. In retirement, the runway is the years between today and whatever age forces your exit. Health, employer decision, a body that can't do the job anymore, a spouse who needs you home. The average gap between when Americans plan to retire and when they actually leave is 5 years. 5 years of runway that was supposed to be there, and then it wasn't. Age 58 is the last point on that runway where 4 different financial boosters are still active simultaneously. Miss this window and those boosters expire one by one on a predictable schedule between now and age 65. Every time I come back to one of these mechanisms in this video, I'm going to call it runway because that's what it is. The central question isn't, do you have enough money? The question is, how much runway do you still have, and are you moving fast enough to use it? In a few minutes, I'm going to show you a specific tax window that opened in January 2025, a window that most people haven't heard of, including people who pay advisors. But first, I want to demolish the assumption that is quietly destroying more retirement plans than any other single factor. The assumption that you get to decide when you stop working. You probably think you do. You have a number in your head, 65, maybe 67, and the plan is to keep working until you hit it. Reasonable, logical. Wrong about 58% of the time. 58% of American workers retire earlier than planned, according to research from the Trans-America Center for Retirement Studies published in late 2024. Not a little earlier. The median actual retirement age is 61. The median target is 66. That 5-year gap isn't random variation. 46% of early retirees cite health problems as the reason they stopped. 43% cite employment issues, layoffs, restructuring, and the company deciding it no longer needs a 59-year-old project manager when it can hire a 32-year-old for 60% of the cost. 7 in 10 retirees stopped working before they turned 65, according to data from the Employee Benefit Research Institute. 7 in 10. That is not a fringe outcome reserved for people who didn't try hard enough. That is the most common outcome. And if you are sitting here at 55 or 58 thinking, that won't happen to me, I would simply note that virtually everyone in that 70% thought the exact same thing. Now, here is why this matters beyond the obvious, and this part is where the money actually lives. It's not just that you lose 5 years of contributions. The real damage is what happens to your portfolio when you're forced to start withdrawing in a bad market. Let me give you 2 people. They both retire with $2 million. They both withdraw $80,000 per year, adjusted for inflation. They both earn an average return of 5% per year over 20 years. Same portfolio, same withdrawals, same average return. The math says they end up in approximately the same place. They don't, even a little bit. One of them finishes with roughly $2.4 million in the bank. The other is dangerously close to running dry. The only difference is the order in which the returns showed up. Morningstar's 2025 research confirmed this in quantitative terms. Retirees who experienced poor returns in the first 5 years and did not adjust their spending were far more likely to exhaust their savings entirely. Schwab's modeling shows that someone who reduces withdrawals after early losses needs roughly 11.5 consecutive years of 6% gains to recover. Someone who doesn't reduce needs approximately 28 consecutive years of the same gains to recover. That is the difference between my money outlasts me and I'm calling my kids when I'm 74. This is called sequence of returns risk. The order of returns, not the average, is what determines whether a retirement portfolio survives. And it concentrates specifically and brutally in the first decade of withdrawal. Researchers Michael Kitces and Wade Paufau identified this window as the period with the highest concentration of sequence risk. A 20% decline on a $1 million portfolio costs $200,000. The same decline on a $400,000 portfolio costs $80,000. Early in retirement, when the portfolio is largest, the damage per bad year is the greatest. Here is the connection to age 58 that makes this specific rather than general. If you are forced out of work at 61, which again is the median outcome for American workers, and the market has a bad year while you are pulling from your portfolio to survive, you have triggered the worst version of this problem at the exact moment your runway ran out. No buffer, no choice, just damage during the danger window. But at 58, with 7 years of runway still ahead, you can do 3 things that fundamentally change this exposure. You can build a 2-year cash buffer designated specifically for sequence protection so that a bad market year in year 1 or 2 of retirement doesn't force you to sell equities at the bottom. You can build guaranteed income layers, specifically structured around a Social Security delay strategy that cover essential expenses without touching the portfolio during those first vulnerable years. And you can reduce your fixed withdrawal requirements by lowering your expected tax burden in retirement through the mechanisms I'm about to describe. At 62, when most people first start feeling the urgency, 2 of these 3 strategies are already partially foreclosed. At 65, you are executing on whatever plan you built or didn't build. The runway ends, whether you're ready or not. Marcus, by the way, is a 57-year-old project manager at a mid-sized manufacturing operation outside of Detroit. He has $240,000 in his 401k, contributes 10% of his salary, and assumes he will retire at 65. His company just announced a strategic restructuring. He's not particularly worried yet. Let me tell you about the bill that will quietly consume more of your early retirement money than you've probably modeled for. Because if your retirement plan rests on the assumption that Medicare coverage begins the moment your paycheck stops, you have a structural problem with a specific dollar figure attached to it. Medicare starts at 65, not 62, not 63, 65. If you exit the workforce before that birthday, you are buying private insurance during one of the most expensive periods of your demographic life. In a year 2026, when ACA marketplace premiums just increased 21% compared to 2025 because the enhanced subsidies Congress created in 2021 expired in the end of 2025 and were not renewed. Here's what that actually costs. A 62-year-old buying a silver tier plan on the ACA marketplace in 2026 pays approximately $1,691 per month in premiums per person. Federal rules allow insurers to charge someone near the top of the age rating curve almost 3 times the rate they charge a 21-year-old. By 64, the average premium peaks at approximately $1,766 per month. Add those 3 bridge years, 62 through 64, and you're looking at $62,340 in premiums alone per person before a single copay, before a deductible that under current ACA rules can reach $10,600 per individual per year before any prescription costs. And that subsidy cliff I mentioned, it's back in 2026. If your income as an early retiree exceeds roughly $62,600 as a single person, you no longer qualify for premium tax credits at all. You pay full price. Now, here is the reversal. You think the problem is not enough saved, but actually the structural problem is the healthcare bill arriving in exactly the wrong years, the first 5 years of retirement, the sequence of returns danger window I just described. If you're forced to pull $60,000 worth of healthcare premiums from a portfolio that also just had a bad market year, you have stacked the 2 worst retirement risks directly on top of each other. People who plan for this at 58 have time to execute 3 moves that people at 62 can no longer execute cleanly. First, maximize health savings account contributions while you still have an eligible high deductible health plan through an employer, because the HSA is the only account in the tax code that is triple tax advantaged, and unlike a flexible spending account, the balance carries indefinitely. An HSA contribution at 58 can pay for a deductible at 63 tax-free. Second, model exactly what income level qualifies you for ACA subsidies during the bridge years, and structure your withdrawal plan around that number. The threshold of $62,600 for subsidy eligibility is not a soft boundary. Cross it by $1 and you're paying full price. Third, do Roth conversions starting at 59.5, which we will cover in detail shortly, that give you a withdrawal source during the bridge years that doesn't count as modified adjusted gross income and therefore doesn't disqualify you from subsidies. The 3-year healthcare gap is not an afterthought to the retirement plan. For people who retire before 65, which again is 7 in 10 retirees, it is the most immediate and predictable cash drain, hitting in the most financially vulnerable years, and it can be mitigated almost entirely through planning that has to begin before you're in it. By the way, hit subscribe if you like this content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show my videos to you again. Marcus took the package. He's 59 now. He had 45 days to decide, and he took it because the alternative was a role that didn't exist. He has no HSA balance because he was on a PPO. He has $240,000 in his 401k. He's about to find out what full price ACA insurance costs in his zip code. Knowing these numbers is one thing. Building a system around them before the window closes is a completely different problem. I built something called the exit code specifically because this information, the withdrawal sequencing, the healthcare cost architecture, the Social Security timing math, is scattered across 100 different sources that were never designed to talk to each other. There's a gap angle here that I want to be direct about. A standard retirement calculator will not model the invisible bill. That's what I call the roughly $14,000 annual exposure that appears for early retirees under 65. The insurance premium plus out-of-pocket costs that almost never appears in projections because most calculators assume Medicare starts when work does. It doesn't. And over a 3-year bridge, that invisible bill is the amount most people spent on their last car. The exit code is 8 chapters of retirement research built on 50 years of actual data, distilled into a mathematical framework for turning sometime before I'm too old into a specific date with a specific number. One section covers the 58% rule, named after that Transamerica statistic, and specifically the buffer structure that separates a forced exit scenario that still works from one that doesn't. Another section covers the dynamic withdrawal method that replaced the 4% rule for people who understand what the research actually shows. It costs less than a restaurant meal. You can find it through the link in the description below. And the math on waiting, well, you know how I feel about the math on waiting by now. Back to the runway. Because the next mechanism is genuinely the most underreported retirement development of the last 2 years, and it has an expiration date. What I'm about to describe was created by Congress in 2022, became active in January 2025, and I would estimate fewer than 15% of the people who could benefit from it actually know it exists. Your HR department may not have sent a memo. Your financial advisor may not have brought it up in your last annual review. And it expires not gradually, but completely the year you turn 64. Secure 2.0. The retirement overhaul bill Congress passed in 2022 created what the IRS and plan administrators now call super catch-up contributions. Starting in 2025, if you are between the ages of 60 and 63, your annual 401k contribution limit is not $24,500 like everyone else's. It is not even $32,500 like it is for regular over 50 catch-up contributors. It is $35,750 per year, confirmed by the IRS for 2026 in Notice 2025-67. Here is how the math breaks down. In 2026, the standard deferral limit is $24,500. The regular catch-up for people over 50 is $8,000, bringing the total to $32,500. But for ages 60 through 63 specifically, Congress added a higher catch-up, $11,250 instead of $8,000, bringing the total annual contribution to $35,750. The moment you turn 64, it reverts. The $11,250 drops back to $8,000. The window is exactly 4 calendar years: 60, 61, 62, 63. At 58, you are 2 years away from it opening. Maximize this window all 4 years at the full super catch-up limit, and you've contributed approximately $43,000 more over those 4 years than you would have under the standard over 50 rules. At 7% annual return, let that additional contribution compound for 10 years until you're near required minimum distribution age. You've generated approximately $85,000 to $90,000 that otherwise would not exist in your account. That's not theoretical portfolio growth. That's new money from a provision Congress specifically designed for people who need to accelerate savings in the final years before retirement. And this is where it compounds with the earlier problem, because super catch-up contributions work in both directions. They build the portfolio faster in the accumulation years, and they reduce your monthly budget pressure in the withdrawal years because the base is larger. A larger base in retirement at 7% compound growth doubles roughly every 10 years. The difference between a portfolio of $400,000 and one of $550,000 at retirement is not $150,000 of income. At 7% over 15 years, that gap widens to approximately $360,000 of difference at age 80. Now here's the timing trap. At 58, you have 2 years to prepare for this window. 2 years to free up cash flow to actually hit the $35,000 limit. 2 years to check whether your employer's plan even allows super catch-up contributions because it is optional for employers, and not all of them have implemented it. 2 years to decide whether you're doing traditional or Roth contributions for those super catch-up dollars. Because if you earned more than $145,000 last year, the high earner rule under Secure 2 requires catch-up contributions to go into a Roth account starting in 2026, which has its own implications for the conversion strategy I'm about to describe. At 62, you're already 2 years into the window and you've already missed 2 years of it. At 64, it's gone forever. There is no version of this conversation where it makes sense to wait. And yet, because this change is buried inside a multi-100-page piece of retirement legislation, and because almost no one reads the actual law, the overwhelming majority of eligible people are not using this window. They are contributing at the standard rate, leaving thousands of dollars of annual contribution room on the table, watching the 4-year window tick down and wondering why they feel behind. Oh, Congress created an $11,000 annual extra contribution window, specifically for people your age, but it ends in 4 years? Weird that nobody mentioned that during last year's 1% fee conversation. The runway is getting shorter, but there's still one more segment, and it's the one that actually determines the long-term tax architecture of your entire retirement. Once this decision is made incorrectly, it cannot be reversed. Here are 2 facts that sit in strange tension with each other. First, most people expect their taxes to decrease in retirement because their income decreases. Second, for people with meaningful traditional IRA or 401k balances, this assumption is frequently wrong, not slightly wrong. Wrong in ways that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 25-year retirement. At age 73, the IRS requires you to begin taking required minimum distributions from your pre-tax accounts, traditional IRAs, 401ks, everything in the tax-deferred pile. The amount is calculated based on your account balance and an IRS life expectancy table. On a $500,000 IRA at 73, that's roughly $18,000 per year in mandatory taxable income, whether you need the cash or not. On $1 million, it's roughly $36,000. On top of whatever Social Security you're receiving, on top of any pension income, that stack of mandatory income pushes many retirees into tax brackets in their 70s and 80s that are higher than their working years. The mechanism that changes this architectural problem is the Roth conversion window, and it has a specific deadline that most people are completely unaware of. Between early retirement and the start of required minimum distributions at 73, there's often a low income corridor. No salary, Social Security not yet claimed, if you're strategic about the delay. No RMDs yet. In that corridor, a married couple filing jointly can often convert substantial amounts of traditional IRA money to Roth at blended federal rates approaching 10 to 12%. That's the tax bracket most people occupied in their 20s. Getting to pay 22-year-old tax rates on 60-year-old money is frankly one of the better deals in the tax code. But the deadline is 63. Here is why. Any Roth conversion you complete at 63 shows up in Medicare's IRMA calculation, the income-related monthly adjustment amount. 2 years later, at 65, when Medicare begins, aggressive conversions at 63 and 64 can trigger Medicare premium surcharges that partially or entirely eat the conversion benefit. The sweet spot after the early withdrawal penalty disappears at 59 and a half, and before IRMA starts mattering is approximately ages 60 through 63. At 58, you are 18 months away from that window opening. Here is what the actual numbers look like. I'm not going to give you vague percentages. A client named Daniel, age 58, converts $50,000 from a traditional IRA to a Roth. He's in the 24% bracket, but pays the conversion tax, $12,000 from his outside savings account. At 6% annual growth over 20 years, his Roth grows to $160,357, completely tax-free. Without the conversion, his traditional IRA grows to that same amount, but at 22% tax on withdrawal, he nets $125,078. The Roth wins by $35,000 on a single $50,000 conversion. Scale that over a systematic multi-year conversion program in the 60 to 63 window, and you are talking about lifetime tax savings that can exceed $200,000 for someone with a mid-sized traditional IRA. Now add Social Security timing to this framework, because this is where the strategy becomes a system rather than a collection of individual decisions. The most popular age to file for Social Security in America is 62. The most financially optimal age for most people is 70. The difference in maximum monthly benefit between these two choices in 2026 is $2,212 per month. According to the SSA's own data, $2,969 at 62 versus $5,181 at 70. Every year you delay past your full retirement age, your benefit increases by 8% guaranteed, backed by the federal government, compounding for life. Over 20 years, from age 70 to 90, the difference between claiming at 62 and claiming at 70 is not $2,000 a month. It is over $500,000 in cumulative lifetime income. Now, connect the Roth conversion window and the Social Security delay into a single strategy. You retire at 63, you delay Social Security until 70. During those 7 years, you live primarily off your Roth IRA withdrawals, which don't count toward modified adjusted gross income, keeping you in subsidy range for ACA insurance during the bridge years, and giving you room to do additional Roth conversions. You systematically convert your traditional IRA dollars to Roth at low tax rates in the low-income corridor. You arrive at 70 with a maximized Social Security payment, a significantly smaller traditional IRA that will generate lower required minimum distributions, and a Roth balance that grows tax-free for the rest of your life without ever triggering another required minimum distribution. This is not hypothetical. This is the specific architecture that people who retire comfortably on median-sized portfolios have built. And it requires starting at 58. Because the 5-year clock on Roth conversion, access matters. Conversions completed in 2026 are accessible penalty-free from 2031 forward, which is precisely when you want that Roth ladder available during the bridge years. Every year you wait on the Roth conversion is bracket space permanently lost. You cannot go back and refill the 12% bracket from 2028 with 2028 conversions in 2032. The corridor is available when it's available, and it closes at 63. The runway has an end. The people who get off the ground are the ones who figured out they needed speed before they ran out of room. Back to Marcus for a moment. He's 61 now, in our hypothetical, where he listened to this video at 58. He's freelance consulting. He's 2 years into the super catch-up window. He has $60,000 in his HSA and Roth accounts combined, built specifically for the bridge years. He's done $30,000 in Roth conversions each year since 59 and a half, at rates below the 22% bracket because his earned income from consulting has been modest. He is delaying Social Security to 70. He's executing the exact strategy I've been describing. The Marcus who didn't listen, he claimed Social Security at 62 because the freelance income wasn't covering everything and he needed the cash. He's paying full ACA premiums close to $17,000 a year with no subsidy because he's pulling from his traditional 401k and that income counts against him. He went through a rough market period in 2025 while actively withdrawing. The sequence damage to his $240,000 portfolio is significant and largely irreversible. Same man. Different decisions at 58. Different retirement. Let me make this concrete with a specific scenario using real numbers. Sandra is 58. She earns $95,000 a year in healthcare administration. She has $320,000 in a traditional 401k and about $40,000 in a taxable brokerage account. She contributes 8% of her salary, about $7,600 to her 401k, receives a 3% employer match. She plans to retire at 66. Version 1. Sandra does nothing differently. By 65, at 7% annual growth, her 401k grows to approximately $514,000 from the base, plus roughly $97,000 from her ongoing annual contributions and their growth, a total approaching $610,000, all pre-tax and all subject to required minimum distributions starting at 73. Her Social Security benefit, if she claims at 67, her full retirement age is approximately $2,300 per month. No Roth, no HSA buffer, no sequence protection. She retires into whatever the market is doing in the first year after she stops. Version 2. Sandra at 58 makes 4 changes. She increases her 401k contribution to the over 50 maximum immediately $32,500 per year by cutting discretionary spending and picking up a certification that earns her a raise the following year. At 60, she switches to the super catch-up at $35,750. She opens a Roth IRA immediately, starts the 5-year clock today. At 59 and a half, she begins systematic Roth conversions of $25,000 per year from her smaller legacy traditional IRA, staying in the 12% bracket. She builds her HSA balance to $50,000, specifically earmarked for bridge year healthcare. By 65, her 401k is approximately $800,000. The higher contributions compound at 7% for 7 years and produce a materially different outcome. Her Roth IRA has grown to approximately $115,000 tax-free. Her Social Security, because she delays to 70, is approximately $2,850 per month, 24% higher than the claim at 67 amount because of 3 additional years of 8% per year delayed retirement credits. Her healthcare bridge is funded through the HSA and the Roth ladder, keeping her modified adjusted gross income in subsidy range during the bridge years. The difference between these two Sandra outcomes, calculated over a 25-year retirement accounting for the tax savings on the Roth, the difference in Social Security income, and the sequence protection is not marginal. It compounds into a number that changes what retirement actually looks like, not what kind of car you drive, whether you can absorb a medical event at 78 without liquidating the portfolio, whether your surviving spouse has options, whether you spend the last decade of your life worried about money, same income, same starting balance, different decisions at 58. This is also the moment in the video where I need to acknowledge the people who will watch this, feel genuinely enlightened, and then do exactly nothing for the next 37 months. They'll mean to look into the super catch-up thing. They'll consider opening that Roth. They'll have a conversation with themselves about it in the car on the way to work, and it will feel like progress. Yeah, I actually knew about the Secure 2.0 thing. I just haven't implemented it yet. Got it. The 4-year window is running. But yes, take your time. Here are 3 specific actions, non-generic, calibrated to exactly this situation, not recycled from every retirement article written since 2009. First, call HR or log into your 401k plan this week and confirm whether your employer's plan offers super catch-up contributions for ages 60 through 63. It's optional for employers. Not all of them have adopted it. If your plan does not offer it, put that in writing and consider whether a rollover to a self-directed IRA or a different employer's plan creates better options. Do not assume your plan offers it. Verify. This is not a minor technicality. It is the difference between $32,500 and $35,750 per year in contribution room during a 4-year window that will never come again. Second, open a Roth IRA today, not soon, today. The 5-year clock on Roth earnings begins with the tax year you make your first contribution. A Roth IRA opened in 2026, even with the minimum allowable contribution, allows completely tax-free access to earnings starting in 2031. A Roth opened in 2029 does not reach that threshold until 2034. 3 years of delayed access is a meaningful structural difference when you're trying to engineer a Social Security bridge. The account setup takes 15 minutes online. You are not waiting for the ideal moment. You are starting the clock. Third, run your own ACA premium quote at your actual zip code for the bridge years you would face if you retired at 62 or 63, not the national average. The national average for a silver plan is useful as a planning estimate, but the actual variance by geography is extraordinary. In 2026, Vermont charges roughly $1,224 per month for a silver plan, while Maryland charges approximately $480. Your bridge cost is not the average, it is your zip code. Know your number before you need to pay it, because at 62, discovering that your 3-year healthcare bridge costs $90,000 instead of $60,000 is not a planning insight. It's a crisis. These 3 moves don't require a 6-figure portfolio. They don't require an advisor. They require the specific information described in this video and the specific timing advantage that exists at 58 and doesn't exist at 65. And before anyone emails me asking whether they should hire a financial advisor instead of doing any of this themselves, the average AUM-based financial advisor charges 1% of assets per year on a $400,000 portfolio. That's $4,000 annually. At 7% compound growth over 30 years. The cost of a 1% annual fee on $200,000 in invested assets is approximately $170,000 in lost compounding. For that, you receive quarterly statements, one review meeting per year, and the ambient comfort that someone else is thinking about it. I'm not saying don't work with advisors. Some of them are excellent. I'm saying understand the incentive structure and verify independently that the mechanisms I've described in this video were part of the last conversation you had with them. Back to where we started. $185,000, $1.46 million. That gap is real. It doesn't close by feeling urgency about it. It closes by using the specific mechanisms in the tax code, the super catch-up window, the Roth conversion corridor, the Social Security delay math, the sequence protection structure in the specific years they're available, in the specific sequence that makes them compound on each other rather than cancel each other out. The runway ends, whether you're ready or not. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. One last thing, and this is the part that doesn't make it into most retirement videos because it requires admitting something uncomfortable about the future. The numbers I've described today are the ones in the tax code right now, in 2026. The current individual income tax rates are scheduled to sunset after 2025 without congressional action. And while they've been extended in the short term, the direction of tax policy over a 30-year retirement is genuinely uncertain. The Secure 2.0 super catch-up could be modified. ACA subsidy structures could change again. Social Security's long-term solvency picture has its own political uncertainty. The urgency I'm describing isn't emotional, it's mathematical. Every year you wait on this is a year of runway that is now behind you instead of ahead of you. And the mechanisms we discussed don't wait for certainty. They exist right now in 2026. For exactly the people watching this video. The question isn't whether the plane can fly. The question is whether you use the runway you